The most terrifying historical events you've never heard of. History is filled with stories of wars, plagues, and natural disasters that have shaped the course of civilization. However, some of the most terrifying events have remained largely unknown, eclipsed by more famous catastrophes. These lesser-known incidents reveal the fragility of life and the unexpected horrors that people throughout history have faced, events that may not have made it into our textbooks, but are no less significant in their impact. Here are some of the most terrifying historical events you've never heard of. The Lisbon Earthquake of 1755. Fire, quakes, and tsunamis. On the morning of November 1st, 1755, the city of Lisbon, Portugal, was struck by one of the most powerful earthquakes in recorded history. The earthquake had an estimated magnitude of 8.5, 9.0, and was followed by a devastating tsunami and raging fires. Tens of thousands of people were killed as buildings collapsed, churches crumbled, and the tsunami swept through the harbor and downtown areas. The earthquake struck on All Saints' Day, a significant religious holiday, which meant that many people were in churches when the buildings collapsed. The disaster not only destroyed much of the city, but also led to a profound cultural and philosophical crisis across Europe, as people questioned how such a calamity could occur in a predominantly religious society. The Lisbon earthquake remains one of the deadliest natural disasters in European history and left a legacy of destruction that reshaped the city and the nation's identity. The Night of the Long Knives, 1934, the Nazi Purge. The Night of the Long Knives was a brutal political purge carried out by Adolf Hitler's Nazi regime between June 30th and July 2nd, 1934. During this three-day period, Hitler ordered the execution of numerous members of his own political party, as well as those considered to be threats to his power, including rivals, dissidents, and former allies. The most prominent victims were members of the Sturmabteilung, SA, the paramilitary wing of the Nazi Party, which Hitler had come to view as a potential rival force. Led by the Gestapo and the SS, the purge resulted in the deaths of at least 85 people, though the actual number may be much higher. Many of those executed were shot without trial, and some were killed in particularly gruesome ways. The Night of the Long Knives consolidated Hitler's control over the Nazi regime and marked a turning point in the establishment of his totalitarian dictatorship. This horrifying event was a clear signal to anyone who dared oppose him. The New London School explosion, 1937, a tragic accident. On March 18, 1937, in the small town of New London, Texas, a horrific accident claimed the lives of nearly 300 people, mostly schoolchildren. The event occurred when a natural gas leak caused a massive explosion at the New London School, a large, modern building that housed more than 500 students. The explosion was so powerful that it reduced the school to rubble within seconds, with debris flying over 200 feet in all directions. Rescue workers rushed to the scene, but the extent of the devastation meant that many children and teachers were killed instantly, buried beneath the wreckage. The explosion remains one of the deadliest school disasters in U.S. history. In its aftermath, stricter regulations were implemented to improve the safety of natural gas systems, including the addition of a distinctive odor to natural gas to alert people to leaks, a practice that remains in place today. The Hindenburg Disaster, 1937. Fire in the skies. The Hindenburg Disaster is one of the most infamous airship accidents in history, but the full horror of what happened is often underappreciated. On May 6, 1937, the German passenger airship LZ-129 Hindenburg was attempting to land in Lakehurst, New Jersey, when it suddenly burst into flames. Within seconds, the massive airship was engulfed in a fiery inferno, plummeting to the ground in a catastrophic explosion. Out of the 97 people on board, 36 were killed, along with one member of the ground crew. The tragedy was captured on film and broadcast across the world, making it one of the first widely publicized disasters of the 20th century. The exact cause of the explosion remains debated, with theories ranging from a static discharge to sabotage. The Hindenburg disaster marked the end of the airship era and stands as a terrifying reminder of the dangers posed by early aviation technology. The Erfurt Latrine disaster of 1184, a deadly collapse. In July 1184, a gathering of nobles in Erfurt, Germany, turned deadly in the most unexpected way. King Henry VI had convened a meeting at St. Peter's Church to resolve a dispute between two rival factions of the nobility. As the assembled knights and lords crowded into a second-floor room, the weight of the group caused the wooden floor to collapse. The nobles were plunged into the latrine below, an underground pit filled with human waste. Trapped in the filth and unable to escape, dozens of people drowned in the sewage. The horrific nature of the disaster and the gruesome deaths that followed made it one of the most nightmarish accidents of the medieval period. While the exact number of deaths is unknown, some estimates suggest that more than 60 nobles perished in what became known as the Erfurt latrine disaster. The Peshtigo Fire of 1871, a blaze worse than the Great Chicago Fire. While the Great Chicago Fire of 1871 is well known, the Peshtigo Fire, which occurred on the same day, remains largely forgotten despite being far more deadly. On October 8, 1871, a massive forest fire swept through the town of Peshtigo, Wisconsin, and the surrounding area, destroying everything in its path. Driven by strong winds, the firestorm moved so quickly that entire towns were obliterated in minutes, and people had little time to escape. The heat from the fire was so intense that it created its own weather patterns, with tornado-like fire whirls lifting houses off the ground and flinging them into the air. More than 1,500 people died in the blaze. Many of them burned alive as they sought refuge in wells, rivers, or any other place they thought might protect them from the flames. The Peshtigo Fire remains the deadliest wildfire in U.S. history, but it is often overlooked in favor of more famous disasters. The London Beer Flood of 1814, a deadly deluge. In the heart of London, on October 17, 1814, a massive vat of fermenting beer at the Mew & Company brewery burst, unleashing a tidal wave of beer that swept through the surrounding streets. The explosion released more than 320,000 gallons of porter, flooding nearby homes and businesses. The wave of beer smashed through walls, trapping people in basements and cellars as the liquid surged through the neighborhood. 8 people died in the flood, most of them women and children, as the beer overwhelmed them. In the aftermath, the brewery was taken to court but was ultimately found not liable, as the disaster was deemed an act of God. While the event might seem absurd at first glance, it was a deadly and tragic accident that brought sudden devastation to an unsuspecting part of London. Forgotten nightmares of the past. These terrifying historical events remind us that the past is filled with dark and frightening moments that often go unnoticed. From freak accidents to environmental catastrophes, history is full of tragedies that have left scars on the communities they touched. While these events may not be as well known as others, their impact on the lives of those who experienced them was profound, and they serve as sobering reminders of the unpredictable nature of human existence.